And for whoever is going to be editing the front part of this video, I will do an official countdown to begin the live stream. Good morning, everyone. We're not starting yet. I just want to have you say where you're from and let us know whether you will be out doing something today, how you're feeling. Ellen just said her head is exploding. I think many people feel like there's some deja vu aspect of this as to how we felt on several occasions during Trump's first and second tenure. So let's give people just a little bit of time to join us, and then we will get started. So we will get started in 30 seconds. I watched the first 10 minutes, 12 minutes of Trump's statements, the meandering statements, which were also an admission of various crimes by the U.S., and he seemed like he was on heavy medication. So we'll go ahead and begin. I'll do an official countdown, 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. This is R.Hubbell from today's edition newsletter. This is our weekly live stream on Saturday. Today, it follows on the overnight attack on Venezuela, the capture of Venezuelan President Maduro and his wife, their rendition to the United States, and then a speech by Trump in which he effectively said, we're going to take over Venezuela's oil industry. So all of this, these attacks on Venezuelan boats and everything in the run-up to this was just a ruse. This was always about the U.S. taking back a fossil fuel industry from Venezuela because Trump was unhappy with the output from that industry. But I want to step back, and I realize we're still right in the middle of things. I want to step back and reflect on how things happened versus what happened. And someone has just posted a question about whether this is legal, and that's what I would like to address. No, it's not legal. So let's start from first principles. What Trump did was illegal under U.S. law. He does not have the power to unilaterally declare and initiate a war on another country. And attacking military bases and civilian sites, as happened last night, it's war. There are no two ways about it. Congress has the authority to declare war, not the president. Not only did Trump not comply with the War Powers Act, which would require authorization from Congress, he did not even advise the relevant committees in the Senate and the House. So there was not even an advise function that was available before the commitment of troops to action. There was no emergency here. He could have sought advice from Congress. He could have sought approval from Congress. So point one, this was illegal under U.S. law and illegal under the Constitution. And before I go on to the other points of illegality, I buried the lead, which is to say that what happened last night is emblematic of the problem of Donald Trump's presidency. He is violating the Constitution every single day in ways large and small, and we must call him out and hold him accountable. And that's not just you and me, who are really the people who are doing it most effectively. It includes the media. It includes Congress. It includes the billionaire tech bros and American businesses and law firms and universities and everyone to say Donald Trump cannot violate the Constitution or U.S. law in any degree. And we must object to each and every time he violates the Constitution or U.S. law, because if we do not, he learns the lesson that he can do so again with impunity. He attacked Venezuela because he knew that Republicans in Congress would not do anything to restrain or constrain him or reprimand him or hold him accountable for what he has done. So every single violation matters. Last night, or in this morning's newsletter, I wrote about this triumphal arch that Trump wants to build in Washington, D.C., in the Potomac. That cannot be done, as I explained, without congressional pre-approval. He's going to do it anyway. And almost no one is raising an alarm about the fact that he is again violating federal law. So, point one, it is illegal under U.S. law because he failed to obtain the consent of Congress or even seek their advice. Point two, the arrest of Maduro was illegal. The way in which individuals are arrested in other countries and brought to the U.S. is known as an extradition. It is done pursuant to a treaty. If we simply go into another country, seize someone, and bring them back into the U.S., that's known as a kidnapping. Um, it's given a fancy legal name called extraordinary rendition. It's still a kidnapping. When you seize someone without authority, without a warrant, without probable cause being shown to a magistrate, that is illegal. That is illegal under U.S. law. And now a kidnapped victim, and I have no sympathy for Maduro. I have great respect and admiration for U.S. law and the Constitution. Someone who was kidnapped is now going to be delivered to the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, or perhaps in Miami, and they will accept a kidnap hostage and then indict them and give them a trial. Sadly, and I hope I'm wrong on this, I've done some preliminary research. Sadly, the fact that someone is illegally seized and then delivered to custody in the U.S. for indictment and prosecution, that is not a defense to the prosecution. It happened with Noriega under Bush. So the lesson that Republican presidents have learned is just go ahead and violate the law. Just go ahead and kidnap people, because once you deliver them to U.S. attorney, it is no defense after that to the criminal prosecution. The third point is that it is illegal under international law. International law requires an extradition and an extradition treaty. Again, there's no mention in Trump's comments this morning about what the basis for seizing Maduro was. Every time we violate international law, we give permission to others to violate international law. My fourth point is this was an attack on Venezuela's sovereignty as a nation. Under international law, each nation has jurisdiction over its citizens, over its territory, under the administration of laws within its jurisdiction. And if Maduro was an illegitimate president, if he was a criminal, then it is up to the Venezuelan people to enforce their laws as the sovereigns in Venezuela. It is not up to the American people to decide whether Maduro rigged the 2024 election, whether he is a narco terrorist, as Trump describes him. In the absence of some international warrant against him, we must respect the sovereignty of Venezuela. And that's a hard concept to keep top of mind when the initial reaction is to say, well, he was a corrupt leader who tortured and killed people and who violated Venezuelan law. We cannot set aside the rule of law when it is expedient, because if we do that, we abandon the rule of law entirely. The most remarkable aspect of this, my fifth point, is that Trump just admitted in his televised speech that this was about seizing control of Venezuela's oil industry, a fossil fuel industry, giving control of that industry to U.S. oil companies. I mean, this was an economic invasion of Venezuela because Trump was unhappy with the fossil fuel output of the Venezuelan oil industry. It is just I mean, this harkens back to the days of the banana republics. And I know that people frequently use the term banana republic, and what they think they're doing is they're disparaging uh, countries in South America because somehow they weren't democratic. No, banana republic refers to the fact that U.S. companies controlled South American countries for commercial purposes. The banana producing uh, companies in the US literally took over the means of government in South America in a number of nations. And that is what Trump just did. We are back to the age of US companies exploiting South American countries for profit. And shame on any US oil company that participates in this illegal action. Sixth, there's a law of unintended consequences here. Trump arrested the president of Venezuela. What happens next? Just no one knows. But just by way of analogy, imagine if Venezuela invaded the U.S. last night, captured Donald Trump, and took him back to Venezuela. What would happen in the U.S.? There would not be automatic regime change. There is a vice president. There are elected officials in Congress. There is a judiciary. There is an infrastructure, like it or not, that supported Maduro in power. And so simply removing Maduro does nothing to affect regime change unless the CIA is going to continue illegal attacks to foment revolution, violent revolution in Venezuela. So there is a law of unintended consequences because whatever forces we unleash in Venezuela may not be constrained to Venezuela. It may affect the rule of law and democracy in other South American nations. And then finally, the question that I think we all have to ask ourselves is what message does this send to the rest of the world? What message does Vladimir Putin take from this? If the US can invade another country because its president subjectively doesn't like the leader of another country, well, I think Putin would be very happy to adopt that as an operating principle for deciding which countries in Eastern and Western Europe he will invade. And what will we say when he does so? And he says, well, you did the same thing with Venezuela. You know, I invaded Ukraine because I wanted their wheat fields, because I wanted their technology industries. We are doing the same thing. And let's put aside Putin. What are we saying to our allies? We are saying that the US rules by force and fear rather than international cooperation. So the how this happened is a disaster for the US. It hurts you and me. It hurts the United States relations with other countries. It damages the rule of law. It is an insult to the sovereignty of Venezuela and to the people of Venezuela. And and the how is the real story here. And I think we need to be very careful to disentangle whatever crimes Maduro committed. And we should also, frankly, disentangle all of the commentary by generals and military observers who are praising the execution by the U.S. military and using overwhelming force to, beat up Venezuela and capture Maduro. Okay, I'm glad, just like you are, that no U.S. soldiers were hurt, that the military was able to get in and apparently use a surgical strike. That does not make it any less illegal. That does not make it any less damaging to the interests of the United States. So let's stop valorizing an illegal invasion of Venezuela under the name of praising American soldiers who were simply doing their job. I know this is very upsetting. I have already heard this morning readers. I can tell you just from I last night writing the newsletter when the first report bombs going off in Caracas came across the wire. But still, it is to wake up and realize that the U.S. has commenced an illegal war, kidnapped the leader of another country, and then, is now going through the motions of um, convicting someone of crimes which they may very well be guilty of, but that prosecution begins itself with the crime of kidnapping. Okay, some questions here. How can the U.S. run Venezuela? It can't. I mean, we're not in a position. We have tried to run other countries, and we have lost thousands and tens of thousands of American lives in trying to run other countries where the people do not want the U.S. to run their countries. We cannot run those countries. Now, my assumption is that Trump and some American oil companies have been talking to their counterparts in Venezuela, and they have hatched all of these plans for the U.S. to go in and modernize the Venezuelan petroleum industry. And all of that seems well and good, except for one thing: the Venezuelan people. They will have a say in what happens or what does not happen. And it is just absolute arrogance and hubris to say that just because there's some profit to be had, that we will waltz in there and run another country without generating a significant amount of resentment and resistance to the U.S. This gets back to the law of unintended consequences. Trump is talking about being prepared for a second larger invasion of Venezuela. That is the last thing that we need, and it is the first thing that Americans should be protesting in the streets this weekend and in the coming weeks. Whether we engage in a war with Venezuela is not a decision that belongs to Donald Trump. It is a decision that belongs to the representatives of the American people. The Constitution says so. Look it up. It says that the Congress shall have the power to declare war. I also, just in terms of resistance in the streets to this illegal action, it's a little early to tell, but my assumption is that this will be a hugely unpopular move by Trump. I'm certain that something that motivated him was the incorrect belief that it would result in an increase in his favorability ratings and support. It probably will, to some minor degree, but I think it will also activate and energize a new cohort of Americans who do not want their country to be in a state of perpetual war with the rest of the world, because there is no logical stopping point. Who is to say that Colombia is not next, or Greenland, or whatever other country, Iran, that Donald Trump gets under his skin and decides he wants to attack? We must have a rational foreign policy that is based on peace through global alliances and security, not on the continued use of U.S. men and women to inflict violence on other countries. There's another question. What about the complicit military? The military obeyed. I think that is a very difficult and prescient question as it relates to the military commanders. I think that the soldiers and sailors and pilots and Marines who were involved probably were not in a position to assess the legality of the order to do what they did. But the commanders were. The commander of the Southern Command knew that there was no congressional action, knew that there was no congressional advice or consent, knew that it was illegal under international law to capture and bring back to the United States the leader of another country. I mean, that's just not even permissible under any international statutes or treaties, in the absence, for example, of an indictment or a warrant by the International Criminal Court. So the military leaders, including the Secretary of the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, knew this was illegal. They all should be held to account. They should be court-martialed. They should have their pensions as veterans removed. They should be dishonorably discharged. What they did, there is no legal defense to what they did, and they should be held to account. And I believe they will be held to account. Trump can pardon them and probably will on his way out of office, but he cannot guarantee that they are not court-martialed, uh, dishonorably discharged, and have their pensions suspended. So shame on them. I mean, they are bringing shame on America. They are violating their oaths to the Constitution. They are failing in their role as leaders to stand up to their commander in chief and to say, no, this is an illegal war, and I will not commit troops under my command to this war. And then the final question, is this any different from Putin invading Ukraine for its resources? I don't see how it's any different. I mean, in fact, well, it's different in the sense that Trump has nakedly admitted this morning, 10 minutes ago, that this is a war about economic expansionism by U.S. oil companies. Putin at least has a little bit of dignity and shame to deny that's what he's doing. Trump is too ignorant to even deny the real economic motivation here. So this is a very difficult morning, and the question is, what can we do about it, and what lesson should we take away from it? And the good news is that it confirms everything that we have been doing. We have been the canaries in the mine. We have been raising the alarm every time Trump violates the law, large or small, to say this matters, the rule of law matters, and the people give their consent to the government to be governed, and we will withdraw that consent when and if necessary. And as I wrote in today's newsletter, we have been the bulwark in defending democracy. And the Wall Street Journal editorial board wrote a beautiful, wonderful editorial this morning condemning Trump for being the January 6th president. And it did not mention a single word about the role that you and I are playing in defending democracy. So be it. We are not in this for thanks. We are in this for our children and our grandchildren and future generations, to pass on the gift of democracy as it was bestowed upon us unbidden. So we need to continue what we are doing, but in greater numbers, with greater volume, with greater dedication. We just have to keep at it. And the good news is that it's working. We have every indication that what we are doing is making a difference. And so we must keep it up. We must not allow the outrage of today dispirit us or make us turn away. No, it should make us redouble our efforts and redouble them again and recruit more people. And even if it's just one or two people standing on a corner in the freezing cold in Vermont, that is an act of patriotism 10 times greater than anything that happened last night in Venezuela by the U.S. military. So keep it up. The fate of our democracy is in our hands, and we cannot let our democracy down. So today is probably a day for processing feelings about watching our country engage in an illegal war and kidnap a foreign leader under the pretense of subjecting him to U.S. justice, or as Pam Bondi said, the wrath of U.S. justice. Justice knows no wrath. Justice knows fairness and process, and that has been denied to Maduro from the first moments of this operation. So what I just want to close you with is to let's all remain calm. Take a moment or two, a day or two, to reflect on this, to gather our strength, and to simply continue what we have been doing. As long as we do not quit, we will prevail. We will win. It is just a matter of time. And then we have a huge amount of work to rehabilitate the rule of law, to reestablish democracy, to repair the Constitution, and to hold everyone to the Constitution every single day of his second term. Thank you all for joining me this morning. As I said, if you can, take a deep breath, and then let's get back to it. Take care, everyone.